to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.com. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. You know, I'm excited that you're sharing this time with us today. Now, as you listen to the show, my guests and I, we get that word change, right? We all kind of go into a little bit of a panic. If you've chosen the change, maybe not so much, but if the change has been thrust upon you, sometimes it's hard to navigate. So to help you navigate change, and again, whatever that means to you, at the core of change, I believe we need to communicate at the highest and most effective level with whoever we're navigating that change with or impacting. So in the show notes, you'll find my communication style assessment. There'll be a little link for you to take the quiz. You'll get 2 reports. One just spotlights your natural superpowers on how your message is being received by others. The flip side, though, you'll get a lowest score. You'll get a secondary report. That one spotlights usually a blind spot with our communication, meaning when we speak with people who are 180 degrees different and how their brain is wired, how is our message landing for them? That's the important piece of the puzzle. So again, quiz, you get 2 reports. I hope it helps you navigate change with ease and grace in your life. Now, the quote today, just to set the stage for my guests and my conversation, is by Johnny Depp. And Johnny says, "Music touches us emotionally where words alone can't." Now, growing up, my older siblings, they both took piano lessons. I got to tell you, I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted to go outside. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to run, play ball, ride my bike, swing upside down from our swing set in the backyard, and just to be free to play. So this whole piano lesson thing, it's like pins in my eyes. Well, today, there are so many benefits for kids' brain development that music can tap into and help kids learn quicker just by understanding that music can be learned like a native language. And I'm going to repeat that because music can be learned like a native language. Are you intrigued? I wish I knew this when I was a kid. So my guest today is Chris Salter. Chris has a deep background in linguistics and music and has studied potential crossroads for decades. In 2001, Chris created the original Piano Wizard Company, and the concept was launched in 2025. Now, in 2028, like most companies, his collapsed and forcing them to kind of retrench and regroup, barely surviving. And then Chris launched a homeschool education version called pianowizardacademy.com that changed lives, leading Chris and his team to pivot to the profound cognitive impact of music brain training. Complicated, not as complicated as you think. Please help me welcome my new and good friend, Chris, to the show. So, Chris, thanks for being on.
Thank you. I must correct 2 dates that you cited. You inadvertently said 2025 and 2028, and people are thinking, is this Back to the Future? No, in
2005.
2005, we launched, and in 2008, the economy obviously crashed, and we stayed alive for another 5 years or so, really going into the homeschool community and finding a home there. But we barely, survived on life support. And finally, I went into a lot of personal debt trying to save the company and the shareholders, and it finally went under in 2013.
Yeah.
But in that period of, Cuban
Mayhem.
Missile Crisis every week, right, trying to make payroll, trying to figure out how we were going to stay alive, in the homeschool community, we found a bunch of parents, dozens at least, that had special needs kids and were taking this game that was designed for toddlers and up for their kids, right? Just to see, they thought, this is so simple, maybe my kid could do it too. Now the games, you can start at a toddler level, but you can put any song written in the last 1,000 years into it because it's MIDI based. And so anything written in Western notation can be imported into the game and played. We have a 100-song curriculum. We did not expect this to be this kind of audience, right? This was something that homeschool parents were just experimenting with. And in particular, we got a postcard when we were just like closing our office in 2009. Everything's, just really stressful. And we got a postcard from a mom saying, thank you so much for repairing the keyboard that we had, because we had a partner that had a keyboard that had a defect in the back, and we just would repair them. And My son has very challenged. He has a very great difficulty communicating verbally, but your game is so simple. He's already learned 30 songs. We're like, wow, right? So we put that up on you know, on the office bulletin board, and we kind of, this is cool, right? We eventually had to move that postcard to our basement because I had to close the office, do everything. But that kind of stuck in my head because that was cool. I didn't expect any of that. And I found about 6 months later online a review that she had done for us on Amazon, right? Very nice review. And she's saying, this was the very first song. It was much earlier in his journey. This is really good for kids with special needs. And, this helped my son, and he wouldn't do anything before this. And she showed him playing, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which is a song in our game. Is so simple. It's just a hand-eye coordination thing. A neurotypical child can do this in like 3 minutes. And she said this took him 3 weeks, but it was the first
Wow.
thing he ever did, right?
Wow.
And she said, he couldn't walk till he was 4. He couldn't talk until he was 6, and he still couldn't ask for a glass of water. He couldn't, you know, communicate with us, right? Very great difficulty with. She felt his mental age was about 10 months,
Wow.
right? At 6, right? But she's one of these tiger moms. She was trying everything. She tried Legos. He couldn't do a 4-piece puzzle. He couldn't do a 5-piece Lego. He couldn't watch Teletubbies. Profoundly, profoundly challenged, right? And he would get lost anywhere they went. He would just wander off like a cat, and they couldn't say his name, couldn't say his right. So they were always kind of just hyper vigilant, as you can imagine, right?
Tough. Yeah, it's tough.
We didn't know any of this. She shared this later, but for some reason he took to this. She said she knew he knew colors, but he couldn't say colors, but he could recognize them. And the color coding of our game basically allows, uh, you know, kids to in a very almost a we would say pre-literate before Jed, but now it's really pre-lingual. Like he could
Yeah.
recognize colors and play. Basically the game works very simply. You've got a color-coded keyboard on the bottom of the screen, on the top of the screen, and you've got a color-coded keyboard in front of you. We basically send them washable, removable stickers to put on their digital keyboard. The digital keyboard plugs into the computer, and you see a game object moving up, right? And it's a purple turtle. And when it gets to the purple key, you hit the purple key. It's that simple, right? Almost like a upside down Tetris. We
Yeah.
have it going up for a reason, because after they do that, and those are, by the way, MIDI files. So when they hit that turtle at the right time, it makes a sound, right? And then the next turtle makes another sound, next turtle, and now they're playing a little song very quickly, right? Again, neurotypical kids instantly can do this. The color coding doesn't confuse them. The second level, and this is inverted for you, but we rotate it counterclockwise, if you can imagine my point of view.
Hmm.
And now we've got the keyboard on this side, and you've got the turtle moving across the screen, again, going to the purple key. And the songs are constructed AA, meaning they repeat for once, right? So the child has played it this way twice. Now they play it this way twice. And we thought originally that we'd have to do this, rotation very slowly. They wouldn't get it, but we didn't have the technology. So I literally picked up the projector, because I had first tested in front of a bunch of kids. My son's Montessori school, and we just tilted it, and the kids just went like, "Oh, I get it, no problem," right? So we skipped that step. But the third level is where we start to, kind of satisfy the parents' agenda, right? We change those color-coded game objects, turtles or flying saucers or whatever they are, into musical notes, but they're color
Mm.
coded still. So they still see this purple game object moving across, and when it gets there, but again, they've played it now at least 4 times. Then we add things like fingerings or note names in there, and we have the kids sing, right? 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 4, and they learn the fingerings in one repetition. They just sing along. Then we take away the colors, and they've still got the note names or the fingerings, and they can see just black notation moving up across a traditional staff, right?
Yeah.
And they've played it now, at this point, at least 8 repetitions, and almost perfectly. This is the other thing. The Zen master Vince Lombardi said, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. So he's
Yeah.
played at 80, 90% accuracy from
Yeah.
first one, right? And
Yeah.
so they see that, then we take away the note names or the fingerings, and they just read in the black notation. Then we take them off the game to the sheet music. And for them, they've now played it 10 or 12 times almost perfectly. And they see the sheet music as a map of a place they've already been before.
Yeah.
There's no trauma. They're not crying. This is in 10 minutes. They're going, oh, I played all these levels. I'm gonna, right. And now they're reading the sheet music and there's the fingerings are in there if they need them. But they basically, it worked so much better than we ever possibly hoped. So Jed, that whole process I just explained to you took 3 weeks, right? And he was only on level 1, right? But his mom posted this. She's so happy. And again, later he went, and when I reached out to her, because I finally had her email, she said, oh, he's way past that, right? He's in book 6 now, right? And the curriculum is like an upside down pyramid of difficulty. The first song's a 2-note song, then a 2-note song, then a 3-note song, then a 5-note song, then an octave. So think of it like this, right? So they're rising, and each song is kind of building the scaffolding of the skills they need for the next song,
Yeah.
right? The 100th
Yeah.
song is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, arranged for 2 hands. So it gets quite complex.
Yeah.
But she sends me a video, and you'll see this. It's on our website. If you go to musicbraintrain.com, scroll down, there's a video of him kind of going through this stages. These are videos his mom shared with us, and basically opened our eyes and kind of changed our trajectory completely, because we had no idea this was possible. So she says, do you think, she shows me a video, he's playing Over the Hill and Through the Woods with this kind of complicated walking bass line, right? 2 hands, and he's playing on level 1. And then he says, I did great, Mom, right? And then she changes it not to level 2 or 3, just straight to level 4 with the black notation and no colors, no names, no colors, no fingerings. And he's reading like fluently, right? And I'm like, wow, right? And then she says, do you think this is impacting his language? Because he's speaking and understanding a lot more. And at this
Wow.
point, I'm like, well, we don't know that, most kids are easily fluent in language before they ever have their first piano lesson, right? So we
Yeah.
don't have data on that. We know about math scores and things like that. But this was like, I don't know. And she says, it feels like it unlocked his brain, because he can do
Oh,
other things now. He can do, full puzzles. He can do Legos. He loves Legos. He did a 5,000 piece Lego Millennium Falcon. It took him 2 months, but he will stay with it now. He's got focus. And, I'm like, wow, do you mind if I share this, right? With other special needs? And again, look, my company's going, yeah. And this is emerging as this other thing, right?
projection. Yeah.
So I started sending out, I had a friend in the autism community, and we suspected that this kid's name is Jed, that Jed was pre-verbal autistic. The diagnosis his mother had was mental retardation,
Oh,
but other people with autism said, I think he's really was autistic. It
yeah.
doesn't matter, right? Something happened and his
Yeah.
brain started growing. I
Sure.
think it was the left and right brain connecting. Piano, because it's in the hands, there's almost 50% of your nerve endings in your body are in your hands, and they
Yeah.
connect the left and right side of your brain. So anything you're doing that is, both sides
Yeah.
tends to increase the communication between the brains, right?
Sure.
That's my suspicion, right?
Hypothesis. Yeah.
Right. So I start sending out, I sent out a couple dozen units for free to families with autistic kids and said, just give me feedback, right? And about half of them actually responded, and it was like aces, right? This is actually working for my kids, and oh my God, this is, they can do this. That's one of the big challenges with kids on the autistic spectrum is the things that they can't do. There's something fascinating about visual entrainment.
Sure.
People on the autistic spectrum use spinning plates, a fan. They tend to, something that's got a visual rhythm tends to fascinate them. And this had music in a visual rhythm, of course. So we're like, we don't know what to do with this, right? And again, I just tried not to lose money because I'm giving away as much as
As you can. Sure.
well, but that said, a year later, I was thinking, I wonder how Jed's doing. And I emailed her, and she said, I'm so glad you called. Jed's on song 99 of your 100-song curriculum. And
1 year later, Chris, 1 year later.
yeah, 1 year later, right?
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, but that the last 10 songs are not part of the curriculum. They're challenge songs. It's Bach, it's Beethoven, it's Mozart. She says, well, we didn't know, so we just kept going. And she sends me a video of him playing Bach, Joy of Jesus Desiring. Da, 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 da. And look, I started studying music as an adult in college, and it took me 2 years to play Bach, right? Here's a kid who never had a piano lesson, profoundly retarded, playing Bach, and I'm like, jaws dropping. And I had asked her the year before, I said, do you think you could get him off the game and read the sheet music? She says, I don't know. He really likes the game. I don't know if that will work. I said, just try, right? And again, a year went by, and now he's not only reading fluently, he's memorized these pieces, right? And I'm like stunned. And she says, oh, he's going to school now. He can read, he can do simple math. The principal at his school thinks he could live independently because he has such tremendous focus. Now he's
Wow.
still mentally challenged, right? So at this point, I'm like, I don't know what I did, but this works. If Jed can do it, anyone can do this, right? And and meanwhile, again, my company is just like going down in flames, and we're just keeping it alive, partly because of Jed, because he kind of became a lighthouse for us, right?
Yes. Oh,
And his mom, she wouldn't give up, right? And then we're like,
absolutely.
we're on to something.
Yeah.
So at this point, I started looking at the neuroscience because I knew all the benefits of music education. We cited all that stuff, and but this, I was like, something
Off
else
the
is going
chart.
on here, right? So what I find out is that we're in the middle of a revolution of neuroscience. They now can look at the brain in action with PET scans, functional MRIs. They've
Yeah.
got tools that can see very in real time what's going on in the brain with different stimuli.
Yeah.
And music is coming up aces. Like they discovered vitamin C for the brain, right? There's a terminology now in neuroscience that is getting into the common thing called neuroplasticity.
Yes.
So what this means is that the brain continues to evolve when challenged and grows new neuron pathways, even new brain cells, even into advanced age, right? We thought that after 7 or 8, the brain was like done growing, right? No, and you've heard of all these situations where people, lose their sight and their hearing increases. Well, that's the brain literally changes and reuses that visual cortex to really amplify the other senses, right? It literally redefines the pathways. So
Yeah.
that's plasticity, right? So music is what they call metaplastic. If you study French, it will not help your math. I tried. Uh, if you study math, it won't help your French, right? But if you study music, it will help your language, your math, your spatial skills, your timing, your coordination. It is a general brain tonic. And in particular, the piano seems to have a profound effect. 30 to 40% jumps in math with 2 years of piano. That's like a leap in evolution, right? What's going on
Crazy.
there? I'm still on the outside looking in. I'm not a neuroscientist, but
Sure.
I'm fascinated here, right?
Yeah.
And the thesis is, like I said, the left and right hand, both sides of the brain, the corpus callosum in the middle of your brain that connects the two, that thickens to 12% with 2 years of piano lessons. So there's something very stimulating about that. And so, again, I'm thinking about all this. My company went under. I'm devastated. I'm financially, completely underwater because I co-signed for, corporate loans and credit cards. But I can't stop thinking about these kids and that we're on to something. I keep looking at the neuroscience. I keep looking at this, and we relaunched because I have great timing. At the beginning of the pandemic, we launched a company called Music Brain Training, and now we've been building a mobile app so the kids don't need to pre-purchase a piano to try the game. So they can learn 30, 40, 50 songs just on the iPad.
It's
We're
crazy.
we're just getting that ready, and we're moving forward. But my background, the reason I think this approach worked with these kids was because I have a background in linguistics and music. And in linguistics, one particular aspect of linguistics is called developmental linguistics. And this always fascinating because I was trying to learn French in the classroom, and it was like, grammar and conjugation and, you're trying to memorize.
Painful.
Yeah, painful. Okay.
Painful. Yeah.
It was not only painful for me, it was painful for those who listened to me. Okay.
Teachers.
No, I went to France to visit my friend who kind of inspired me to learn French, and he was there as an exchange student. And I had a 4-year-old girl trying to correct me, and she was just looking at me like she's saying rouge, say rouge, and I like rouge, and I couldn't get it right. And she's looking at me, and you could see her thinking, "Is he this stupid?
Yeah.
Or is he messing with me?" Right? And then she came to the conclusion, "He's this stupid."
Stupid.
So it's
We've
very
all had that experience, Chris.
it's very difficult, very humbling. But this girl at 4 spoke fluent French, right? And every country in the world, no matter how complicated the languages are, and I've studied some complicated languages. I studied Japanese and Chinese and Setswana. I was in the Peace Corps, right? These these kids grow up fluently. So what's going on? They call this the native language acquisition
Yeah.
process. Very
Yeah.
different from the formal abstract. And what I saw in my college, I had a piano teacher who's the true piano wizard named Don Beatty, and he had a completely unorthodox, no sacred cows approach. And we played first, and then we read the music we write. And so he was the inspiration that inspired me.
Fascinating.
And so if you think about how we learn our native language, we learn to speak fluently first, then we learn to read words we already know, right? We don't have to learn the words usually. And then we learn grammar after we're fluent in reading and speaking. Then we learn the grammar. In a traditional piano lesson, you have to learn the theory, the grammar, and decipher it to see the written notation. Every good boy does
Absolutely.
find, you know, the sharps and flats and key signatures and time signatures. You're like, take me now, Lord, right? I don't know what I've done, mommy. I'll be good. Please don't make me take piano anymore, right?
Absolutely.
And
That
it's
was me.
but it's you're not alone, right? Like 12% of Americans can play a musical instrument fluently, and 85% of them have had lessons. That's a profound failure,
Yeah.
right?
Agree.
So this approach emulated, so the kids learn to play first, and then they recognize how music notation represents a song they already know how to play. And only then do we introduce some theory, right? And that, look, I thought it would be better. I did not think it would be like minutes instead of
Off the
months,
charts. Yeah.
right? And I did not think I could reach these kids at all. I had no concept of that. I just thought, well, it'd be better if we did this game, and and then you get this profound impact, and then you're like, your company goes on, you're like, well, I can't stop. I'm on to something. I'm on to something, right? During
Calling.
the
It's a
hiatus,
calling, Chris. That was a calling, right?
I do feel called, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm obsessed about this, but
Yeah.
since then, I also designed a series of little mini games that teach the other elements of music. So think of in a language, like if you're learning French, they have something called phonemes, which are meaningful units of sound in French. And we overlap about, I don't know, 80% of them, but they've got
Oh,
a good 20% of their sounds that we don't have, like the nasal sounds, right?
yeah.
And, one sound I couldn't get was U, right? It's not oo, it's U. And so people would say, who's going? I'd say two. And they'd say, everybody? And I'd go, no, two. You, but I would say two, and they'd say no, two, and I couldn't make the sound right. Again, frustrating 4-year-olds all over the world. So this is a meaningful unit of sound. The point is, obviously, pitch is a meaningful unit of sound in music, but think of the pitch as the consonants of a language, right?
Yeah.
The vowels that connect the pitches are the intervals in music, and they're often silent, right? Bump, bump. You don't actually hear that, but that distance and that between the two on a melody is very meaningful, right? You might be arpeggiating, doing a triad, and da ba 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 ba, right? This has very much both structure and meaning in music, and I feel like this is the missing phoneme that most people, when you get into college, they're trying to train your ears to hit da 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 da. What is that interval? Da da. What is that interval? Right. Ba ba. You're trying to identify these with a kind of a name, right? And for me, it was very challenging because I only started studying music as an adult. So I would hear these intervals, and it was like saying, "What's the difference between this brown and that brown?"
Yeah.
The exact difference. I had no idea, right? I just knew they were
Right.
different. I didn't know how. Very
Right.
difficult to quantify. But this can be, it ended up just being repetition. So our whole philosophy is repetition with variation. So it's fun variation. So you're moving through this. And so we've designed games to teach kids both the pitch and the intervals, and then put them together. And what do you have? You have melodic wizard, then you have harmonic wizard. You stack them up and they create different patterns. And so think of like color-coded Tinker Toys or Legos on a touchscreen. That's what we're designing now. So that kids can just, like Legos, they can play with this and flip it upside down and see what that sounds like. Flip it backwards, break it apart, put this part on here. My son was so creative with Legos. He'd get different Lego sets and put them together into some kind of monstrosity and show it off. And we're like, oh, okay, that's amazing, right? That creativity is what I'm trying to tap into, and that we have that creativity in language. Once we learn our basic sounds and words, we can combine them endlessly. There's a spectrum in music of kids of people that can read what anyone else has written. They can read sheet music, but they can't improvise, and others who can improvise totally and create and can't read. Best musicians can do both, right? So that's what I'm trying to bring with music brain training. Once we launch Piano Wizard for the mobile market and the pre-K market, we're going to bring these other mini games in and see how that's impacting their brains as well.
All right, so now, guys, usually we have this a
More of
little
a
bit different.
dialogue.
Yeah, but here's the thing. No, Chris, here's the thing. It's my show, right? I could have interrupted you, but I really wanted everyone to clearly understand and I just want to take a step back. So I met Chris at a networking event, virtual. We're in two different parts of the United States. And you and I were in a breakout room together, a little get to know you, 3 minutes, whatever it is. And you shared the link in the networking event for the video of Jed. I leave the networking. I say to Chris, oh, it kind of sounds interesting. I watched the video, post the networking. We were already off. And I was profoundly moved. And I emailed Chris and I said, you really do. I know we talked in the networking, but you really need to be on the show. So that's the background of why I asked Chris to come on. Second thing, I did not want to interrupt him because the trajectory of what he just shared with us as the listeners, right, is that this neuroplasticity. And here's the cool thing, Chris. You were ahead of your time, dude, right? When the business was failing, you were clearly onto something. Had the technology been, a decade ago or 10, 15 years ago, what it is now you have apps and these other things, which the price point is lower, but you can get to the masses. Number one, I think that's a good thing. Second thing, go ahead. What'd you say?
No, you're right. It's huge. The iPhone didn't even exist in 2008. It just launched, right? There's no app for it. Yeah.
Nope. So that's number one. Number two, and this is why I think it's going to be successful now, Chris, by the way, but number two is the studies with children with autism. Like this is the schools, right? Like Homedale, where I grew up and my kids grew up in New Jersey. They have a stellar in-class support system, right? It's one of the better ones in the state. So autism, we have these private schools for children that have these severe issues, like it sounds like what Jed is doing. Additionally, because of COVID and everything in the mix of this, you have more parents homeschooling and or creating these pods of learning. So this needed resource, it's going to become, I believe, a needed resource. I think this should be part of the education system because let's face it, Chris, you know, when I was in school, I was pretty smart, right? In spite of myself, but there were things I wasn't great. Like I'm still not good at grammar. If I had learned an instrument with that grammatical, like that linguistic, like you're saying, would my brain have the manipulation of the neuroplasticity? Would it have changed? Maybe I would have been better in grammar, right? I'm still poor in grammar as a 60-year-old. So you see what I'm saying? I feel like the school systems period need this, you know, software and bring it
I
into
think
the school
you're absolutely right, especially about COVID. It really showed how broken our traditional system was.
Yes.
And so what we can't go all digital. No one responds to that. If you put kids just in front of digital stuff all day long, they don't actually socialize, they don't progress. We need a blended model. And
Agree.
what I didn't realize is that we had a blended model. We created 50 videos for the parents to watch. It's like a 10-minute video. Here's what here's what you should be doing with, because we couldn't get the kids off the game to the sheet music. The parent had to do that. And so we coached the parents. This is this is our secret agenda. We're teaching them fingerings. We're
Yeah.
teaching them the musical alphabet. We're teaching them a pedal point. We're teaching them simple harmony. So the parents, right alongside the kids, could kind of learn the next musical concept and go with them, right? And an unexpected benefit, again, was parents saying, I'm bonding with my kid, right? And on the autistic spectrum, they won't hug you, won't look you in the eye, won't talk. Can you imagine as a parent? I mean, I can't, right? So that they're sitting there making music, and I'm getting goosebumps just because
I
of
know.
testimonials, right? They're bonding with their kids, but neurotypical parents are bonding with their kids. One of
Yeah.
our attorneys, he has daughters, right? And he's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to play with my daughters? And then he saw this. He's like, that's it. I have memories of my dad playing baseball, and they're going to have memories of us playing music, right?
Yeah.
And so that, there's the, we're being very abstract about neuroscience and all this, but there's this whole emotional and
Oh,
social bonding that happens with music. Music should not really be in competitions. I always felt they were kind of an aberration. It
yeah.
is cooperative. You
Yeah.
make better music together, right?
Yeah.
And that is a part of the human soul. We didn't survive
Absolutely.
just because we were competitive, but we also cooperated. And
Yeah.
that cooperative side is as fundamental to our
Yeah.
development, our evolution, our safety as anything else. And music just really makes that joyful, right?
And the cliches, right? Oh, music is the window to the soul, and my quote, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Music touches all of us. Even if you speak a different language, we can hear a song not in our native tongue and be moved by it, right? And you and I don't even have to have a conversation about it. So, and the other piece of the puzzle too, I think, Chris, why this is going to be, I think it's going to profoundly impact the education system, period. Whatever that means, right? You fill in the blank depending on where your kid is. But I think that the now that we have this neuroplasticity, we have, like you said, the science to watch what happens to the brain. Now we have kids want to play, but we can learn through playing. We've learned all these things. You've just taken it to the next level of connecting that right and left lobe. And it was funny because, you said playing music, you're using both sides of the brain. You're back and forth, right? You're firing depending on which side or which hand you're using. And the nerve endings in the fingers. That was another thing that you said. I was like, wait, what? That makes so much sense. So you're really getting into the neuroscience of the brain, and we know, right? I think they say we use 10% of our brain capacity. Can you imagine if we use more? I think this is tapping into that more. It's already there. We just don't know how to connect the dots, and you're able to do
My
that.
theory on that, and it's not my own, but basically think of the prefrontal cortex, what we think of as ourselves,
Yeah,
as kind of a very good flashlight or laser. It can really focus on this and focus on this and focus on this.
yeah,
The
yeah,
rest of the brain is very 360, right? And can
yeah,
see everything, right? And right now, your heart is beating and coordinating everything. You have enzymes flowing, your blood is flowing, your oxygen is being exchanged. All these trillion things are going on in your body without any awareness, but there's a super intelligence in your body
yes,
that is coordinating all this, right? But that is also the backdrop. And I don't know if you've had this experience. I kind of learned like this. I like when I first started doing construction, I'd be like this dumbest guy, like, what? Huh? And that, do I put this here? And right. And then once I got, oh, this is how we're framing and we'll need this. And then I'm the guy who anticipates, oh, you're going to need a saw, or you're going to
that's
need a
right.
measuring point, you're going right. But until I got the whole system, the bigger
Picture.
global view snapped in. And I think music, like you said, it's think of like a project management chart where you've got this thing going on while this is going on here and it's dependent on this. That's really music notation. It's like advanced project management on the
Yeah,
fly. Kids are having to go to another level just to cope with that complexity.
yeah,
The joyful practice, right? So they're
yeah,
they're they're getting into it, and I think it does really stretch their brains in ways
yeah.
that we didn't know.
No. And our education system, and this is not a put down to our teachers who I think work hard and show up and all of the
Absolutely.
things. I mean, we should be grateful. But on the same token, the system, I think itself it's more about the testing than the kids learning. So if we could tap into this type of thing to make the learning process, oh, by the way, easier and more fun, right, than memorizing crap and then forgetting it, it's going to impact the testing on the back end. But we have to change those core behaviors. It's so funny. It's just like sales. I'm sorry. Once you get good with the communication with the client and make it about the client, not about you, just a little shift of the mindset, all of a sudden the behaviors drive the numbers. But we have to change the behaviors. I can't manage a number.
So
It's the same thing.
that teacher I mentioned, Don Beatty, he said there tends to be three types of teachers. There's subject centered. We got to get through this material, right? And we've all had that teacher, right?
Sure.
But don't matter if you understand it, we got to get through this, right? And then there's the teacher centered, and this is all about me. And luckily there are maybe fewer of those, but we've all had
Agreed.
those too, right?
Yep.
And then there's
Yep.
the student centered, right? And a student centered teacher is trying to adapt themselves and the
Right.
material to maximize the students' abilities, right?
Yes.
And this blended education allows people to basically um, do this in their own self-paced ways, right? When we did our very first Piano Wizard Academy, we had like 20 kids, right? And some kids would just want to stay on level one, right? And we are trying to encourage them to go to level two, but they knocked down 10 songs on level one. I just like this level, right? And then we convince them that, oh, the turtles can also swim this way, right? And you try and coax them, right? But as long as they were having fun, we were like, we were just experimenting. It was like the first time. But very quickly they saw their peers doing it, right? And they would learn from each other. How do you do that? Oh,
Yep.
you cross your hand over. Oh, you do? Oh, okay, right. Because I can't get to that one in time, right? And this became very infectious, right? And that was where we really had a revelation. He came to my son's school, and the kids learned 20 songs in a week. My I had to travel the Tuesday and Wednesday, and I told my son who was participating, he was about 8, maybe. And I said, listen, I want you to try and learn as many songs as you can to the notation level. And I want you to behave. This is my former teacher, right? And I'm giving him the whole, be good boy, right? I come back on Thursday. I told him, look, for every song you learn on the sheet music level, I'll give you $1, right? And I come home, he says, you owe me $16. I'm like, don't lie to me, right? I'm really pissed, right? Because it's so easy to check. He learned 16 songs in 4 days. I'm like, what are we doing here? What's going on, right? And my wife's like, you have to change that deal. That's too much money for an 8-year-old. I'm like, where am I going to get
I love your wife.
my kid 16 songs for $16, right? So we were like, okay, this is way better. And that's when I found that he had this whole kind of science behind the scaffolding of each song. And then we said, look, you have to create a video for the parents so they understand what you're really up to here. And
Yeah.
that Piano Wizard Academy, we still sell it at pianowizardacademy.com. It's a sunsetting product, right? It still needs a keyboard. It works on PC and Mac. It will not work on the 64-bit Macs. We have not advertised it in 3, 4, 5 years, but special needs parents still find out about it and they still
Yeah.
use it. But we've been trying to transition as a company to this new platform, the mobile platform, that make it
Yeah.
much more accessible and much more
Absolutely.
affordable.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
that's our
Chris,
goal.
we're out of time, but okay. So if you're not intrigued, anybody, so here's the thing that this is the ripple effect. Anybody in academia, reach out to Chris, because if we could get this in the school districts, he makes money,
Especially
certainly.
private schools,
Private
special
school.
needs and pre-Ks is where we're going to start out.
Yep.
That's the market we could really own.
Yeah.
It works with any age, believe me. We I've got more stories on older people playing it too, but it is available to anyone. And on the music brain training side, we're really gathering emails just to find when we do launch this. We want to know, do you want to be a beta tester? Do you want to
Right. People can choose.
pre-purchase? There's a
Yeah.
whole
Where they fit in.
and if you have a pre-K or special needs school, if you can get us in contact, because we want to get in those hands first.
Yep.
Uh, but it will be
Yeah.
available to anybody.
So everybody, if you could help Chris, to me, this is so worthwhile. And you know what, we need we need to help our kids. And I think that the education, the teachers you mentioned at the end that are student centric, I think that's the majority. So if we can give them these fun, delightful, intriguing, tools that amplify and accelerate the learning in the classroom. And oh, by the way, make it fun so the kids do want to show up for school and not be, oh, I have to go to school. This could be a great opportunity. So please, please think about who you can introduce Chris to. So I'm going to give you some info. Email chris@musicwizard.com, and it's Chris, Chris, typical name of Chris. Website is musicbraintraining.com. And within that one's easier to find the video of Jed, correct?
There on that.
Yeah. So here's the deal, guys. Go to the website, watch that video. If you know anyone that you think Chris needs to meet, right? There's no bad introductions here if they're in that world. And again, Chris is working on the back end to create it from a more sophisticated and not more money sophisticated, but these apps are so much more affordable than actually having to buy the keyboard right now at its inception. So if the schools can bring this in, I think it's a no-brainer from a cost-effective. The learning impact could be exponential. We just need to get the word out. So again, watch that video. It blew my freaking mind. And I had to have Chris on the show because I feel like this is information that needs to get out so people can see what's possible. So Chris, thank you for being on. And everybody, please, if you can help Chris out, that's really what he's doing right now. Connect with him, and then you could figure out where in the scale of helping him, what that means, right? It could simply be an introduction, if nothing else, but Chris is looking to get the word out. And this is important stuff, man. This is really important stuff. So Chris, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your passion and enthusiasm. And the other thing, even though, think about this, everybody, business was failing, he still knew he was onto something, and you keep doubling down. Right now I think you were ahead of your time, dude. Now I think like the technology has caught up to you. I think the schools after COVID are hurting more than they ever have. And I think the spotlight is clear that we're lacking, and we're not really sure where. This really, really can be the stepping stone to helping our kids learn. And oh, by the way, the kids from COVID, they're already, stats are out, Chris, you probably know better than me. Yeah. These kids are suffering that 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-olds during COVID, their social skills, their learning skills, they're way behind. So this might be exactly like a reboot for what we lost in COVID. This might be that stepping stone. So Chris, thank you for being on again. Thanks for hanging with us to the end, guys. I know this show went a little bit over. This is just important. This is just really important information. So thank you. Thank you again, Chris.
Again, Connie, thank you all for listening. And yeah, I'll be answering the emails.
Yes. He's the guru with this stuff. So reach out, seriously. And he's passionate, and he is delightful to chat with. So again, I hope that me sharing him with you can help you. And again, whatever that means to you on the back end, especially in academia.
The real question, if it's not you, who do you know? Right?
Who do you know? Somebody. Introductions. I'm always talking about networking, Chris. So yes, you're speaking my language. And thank you all for joining in on the show today. And I hope you'll join weekly as we question, build, and discover together, no matter where you are in changing, whatever that means to you, whether it's career, business, kids, family. My guests and I, we really do hope that we inspire you to take change seriously and take the information that was shared and apply it in your own life. So again, I hope this hit you personally, or it hit you with someone that you should be connecting Chris with. Thank you again, Chris. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.com. I truly wish you all an inspired week filled with change. And again, fill in the blank for you wherever you are in life. But I am honored to have you on this journey of change with me. And I will see you all next week. Have a great one. Be inspired, guys. Do something. Support Chris. That would be an awesome first step. Thanks again. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you again, so much.